All right. Um, Thanks a lot for that really beautiful introduction, Aaron. Like, I think you absolutely nailed it. And it's also kind of funny that you mentioned teaching English, because me and Chris, we actually used to sit together in English class at school. We were always there together. Um, so it's kind of funny for us to be launching this book here now. We were talking about how our old English teacher, Miss Saunders, would probably be really proud of us. And I don't think she would be surprised at all to see Chris here. Maybe she'd be like a little bit more surprised to see that I'm still like sitting alongside him. But yeah, it's been really a lot of fun. Um, so like Aaron said, our book, it's code poetry. But before getting into exactly what code poetry is, I'd like to read a little excerpt from one of the kind of essays Aaron mentioned in the book, which is about the kind of importance of I guess, the aesthetic experience of programming, which is kind of a big part of what this collection is about. In the world of tech, we hear a lot about new machines, new businesses, and new personalities. But we hear very little about the quiet cultural revolution that has been happening alongside the development of programming and computer science. It's a muffled eruption taking place in dark bedrooms, in basements and offices, an eruption of geeks, outcasts, gays, socialists, hippies, anarchists, nerds, and libertarians. Much of it has been faceless, echoing only into its own spaces, propagating to the outside world slowly via the internet. On the outside, it looks bizarre and impossible to decipher, but on the inside, you'll find a number of things that have come to unite programmers: a sense of generosity and selflessness, a love of clever and playful things, a wish to remain faceless or anonymous, an absence of financial motivation, and an overarching longing to be accepted. These remain the same regardless of the programming language being spoken. And there's good reason to sit up and take notice of this culture which has been rumbling away quietly. It will play a large role in the future of humanity. Programming will be taught in secondary school like English and mathematics, and the experiences of programmers today will be a model for the experience of many millions of children to come. If we're interested in showing people how it feels to be a programmer, then we need to know what aesthetic symbols represent programmers, the objects that demonstrate their common experiences and bring them together regardless of faction and creed. These are the stones left over from the destruction of the Tower of Babel, and each one is an important artifact. So that kind of gives you a brief idea of the sort of things we're interested in this book. But what actually is a code poem? So I think the best way is to just show one. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so what you can see on the left is a program. So it's a program written in a programming language called Lua. And when run, it produces the output you see on the right over here. As you guessed, this isn't a normal computer program. So it's a bit of code that is simultaneously, functional logic that will produce the output you see on the right, and it's also a poem. So our book is basically a collection of 25 poems like this one. Each one is written in a different programming language, and they all produce unique visual output when you run the programs. It also contains 2 essays about our kind of experiences making the collection, and what we're calling like a manual page, which has little descriptions and kind of information, little interesting facts about each of the different poems in the collection for people who want to kind of find out more about them. There's also a website, code-poetry.com, where you can view a selection of the poems and their animated outputs. So some of the outputs generated by the poems are actually animated and they move. So this poem, which you see, it was inspired by when I lived in Edinburgh and I was studying for my doctorate in computer science. So in kind of typical student fashion, there are a bunch of us living together. We were in these tiny rooms in this big, beautiful old building that used to be a brewery. So it was called the Barrowlock Brewery, and it overlooked a big park in Edinburgh, some of you may know, called the Meadows. So this poem, it's basically just about the fond memories I have of sitting in that little room and programming from morning until evening. So I'd like to read it to you now. Wake up late and the children are already at the park. Air drifts through the curtains and there are 8 hours ahead of silence and children's laughter. And the thermals return thoughts from yesterday. Open them on the stack, indented deep in long symbolic expressions. Each node a leaf, folding open, revealing future actions, so in winter you think the process will never end. And today the root is visible, which means slowly, faithfully, the stack starts to collapse. Branches wrapping themselves in parentheses, closing, and faster they tumble until it's 5 p.m. and the children have left the park. So thanks, and I'm going to hand things over to Chris.
Thanks very much, Dan. Yeah, I have fond memories of visiting Dan when he was living there in Edinburgh. So yeah, it's very evocative. So next, I'd like to read you a poem called Chernobyl.rkt. And I actually visited Chernobyl back in 2016. The Chernobyl exclusion zone. I went on a tour and it was surprisingly beautiful, kind of like an untouched nature reserve with snow on the ground and herds of wild horses and a very friendly fox who kind of wanted to steal people's sandwiches. So this co-poem that you can see on the left is written in a programming language called Racket, which is from a family of programming languages called Lisps, which use a lot of parentheses or brackets. So this makes Racket a really ideal language for expressing the rambling, digressive speech of the poem's drunk speaker. So I'm going to read it now. You ask me why I drink? I was on the board. Agronomy. Pripyat. At the time when word went up, I passed a liquidator shouting for vodka. No, singing an old party song. A happy one. That our readings were wrong. All the old people were oblivious. An apron, no lead, makes my cow Ukrainian grey, safe to milk. And were the ones on duty and in private there, the technical people from Moscow, saying it can't be fixed. It will take eons to clear. The earth will be beautiful, but barren. Fooling the media, the usual corruption. And what are chemicals to a peasant? An atom, a nucleus, a neutron. But they understood when their portions halved. And halved again. Why don't you? So now I'd like to read from another code poem called codeviolation.pde. And yeah, I'm going to put a hat on, which you'll understand shortly. But this code poem is written in the processing programming language, which is a language commonly used by visual artists. And the code poem is in a shape of a tennis racket, and the visual output is an animation of a spinning tennis ball, as you can see on the right. So tennis has always been really close to my heart. I grew up very close to Wimbledon, and I still to this day like to camp out overnight to get into Wimbledon. I even tried unsuccessfully to be a ball boy back in the day, and I've been learning to play tennis for the past 18 months or so. So and to me, there's a kind of a beauty in the symmetry of the tennis court, the two players facing each other as if the net was a mirror. So I incorporated some palindromes into this code poem that you can see on the left, and so words that are the same backwards and forwards. And this code poem also features the voice of the umpire who calls the score and any code violations or infractions to the rules. Sellers versus Kerrick. Float, Billie Jean King. Number 1, float backhand in. Tennis, avoid the net. 1 set up. Grip size, frame rate. Push ball, avoid drawing king. Background, fill seats. Circle. Color sellers, white. Set, 5 love sellers. Point, 40-15. Rain delay, float, sinet, sinking, tanking. King equals 6 love, love 2. Tennis equals sinet. No stroke, string gauge, 1.05 millimeters. Final set, 6 love. String tension, match gauge, double fault, push style, fill pint. Service equals second. Service box, save strings for set 3 tension. Stroke weight, float net equals tennis. Long ball, 40 love, into net. Ball boy, ball boy, please. Float, abuse, wide, semaphore. Sinet, tennis, 1-5, 1-5. Snowert, ellipse. Ball abuse, 15 all. Net, 6 love, love 6. Racket equals Wilson. Switch racket. Case win, print line base. Break. Case lose, print line side. Break. Default Kerrick. Print line center. Break racket. And finally, I'd like to close off by reading a poem called By Conspiracy or Design.js, written in the JavaScript programming language. This poem is in the voice of a ranting conspiracy theorist who he sees the golden ratio in the spirals of the chemtrails or the vapor trails from airplanes. And you can see on the right that the code poem outputs a spiral, which actually does conform to the golden ratio. Now, as well as words, code poems are made of symbols, as Dan mentioned at the beginning, like dollar signs, ampersands, square brackets. And until now, you've noticed perhaps in our readings, we've ignored these symbols when reading aloud, but we did come up with a little system for reading the symbols aloud by assigning each symbol a sound. So for example, ampersand would be one sound. So this reading I'm about to do might sound a bit bizarre and a bit different from the previous ones, but I find it personally a lot of fun to read this way. And I'd say it's to be taken no more seriously than the conspiracy theorists' theories. So I'll take my Wimbledon hat off and ask you to brace yourselves. Caps, infinite naps, eek, spiral, dot log, par divine, tar, slash, par spiral, dot pi, slash tar, sem, if, par 0, tar brace, function caps, chemtrails, naps, par spirit, tar brace, return, brack. Spiral dot cause, par spirit, tar, star, spiral dot x, par caps, infinite naps, star, spirit, tar, com. Spiral dot sin, par spirit, tar, star, spiral dot x, par caps, infinite naps, tar, spirit, tar, crack, sem, trace, equals eek, 100 click, caps, proof, naps, calm of calm, chemical calm, dump, sem, wind, call, across, calm, the calm, sing, September, ting, hyph, blue, calm, sky, sem. Bending par to com, the com caps ratio naps tar sam, as call caps nature naps eek, fights score back sem. Now, finally, we hope you enjoyed this very brief introduction to our code poetry project. And if you enjoyed it, in the book and the website at code-poetry.com, you will see many more unique code poems. For example, some we didn't get to talk about today are a code poem made up of an image of a piece of bark. So that's an image being a program somehow, and a code poem in the form of a Shakespeare play, which again loops back to Aaron's lovely words at the beginning about Shakespeare, and I totally agree that you don't have to understand everything. It's absolutely about the feeling. And in that Shakespearean language, the logic is dictated by the number of insults that characters use, which is quite fun. And last of all, thanks so much for Aaron for taking a chance on this unusual project, and yeah, having the patience, flexibility, and grace, and yeah, courage to take this on. And yeah, it means a lot to be coming back after Aaron took another risk on me back in 2018 and published my first publication. So huge congratulations also to the other readers launching books tonight. Thanks very much.